What's going on, everybody? Gunnar here, and today I want to introduce to you guys the Swimbait rig. Check it out. So what Swimbait rigs are, they're a really simple adaptation to extended body work. And it's designed to be paired with this hook, and it creates some of the coolest tying platforms that I've ever been able to do. And so what the rigs allow you to do, most importantly, is balance the hook. So when you tie on, say, the big 6-aught, what you have to understand is the 2-aught, the 4-aught, and the 6-aught. The more that hook grows, the longer it is, the deeper the gap, the thicker the wire, the more weight it has. And it's all weighted in the rear because you're limited to your material stacking. It's all at the head. And what the Swimbait rig does is it allows you to stack materials throughout the fly, and then it supports the weight of the hook bend. So now you have all these anchor placements supporting that hook, and the hook rides perfectly level. And that's really cool because it allows me to get flies to suspend instead of the other solution, which is a seesaw effect. You weight the head, right? And weighting the head is going to create a dip or a jig or a dive. That's not a bad problem solving to have. That's not a bad action to have. But if you want it to suspend, this is the rig that I've come up with, and I think it's slicker than slick. So what I want to do is I'm just going to put them in the vise and just show them to you to hopefully pique your interest. But this is the 2-aught, very simple. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go over the nuance of each rig in those tutorials. So today we're going to try a chosen one variation. I think we're going to do a nice bucktail deceiver on the 4-aught. I'll go over the nuance of that rig. We're going to come in and tie an extended body bulkhead on the 6-0, and then I have a bonus video, which is a beast fly on the Swimbait hook. Like, it's the coolest thing. So this is the 2-aught, very simple extended body, and we're going to talk about the nuance here in a second. For the 4-aught, this is what that one looks like. You can leave the loop off the back if you want, but it makes a really cool accessory loop right there to support the hook weight, and then you can dress wiggle tails, flash tails. You can just kind of modulate the fly however you like. When you come into the 6-aught, you have the extended body bulkhead version, so you have your tail dressing, your mid body dressing, and your head dressing. Very simple to do. And then this one I think is the coolest thing on the planet because it's like a modified shanked beast game-changing tail with a structured hollow fly hidden bulkhead head. It's like the coolest thing on the planet. So those are the Swimbait rigs. Today is all about the 2-aught. We're going to tie a chosen one variation. And what I want to do is introduce a material substitute for Swimpish hair, and then I'm going to show you guys how to stack a strung fuzzy fiber head and create that classic bulkhead shape, because I know the dubbing loop trips people up. So let's dive in, let's tie a chosen one, Swimbait style. Let's do it. The reason why the 2-aught is the simplest is because it's the lightest wire. And what we're going to do is we're going to use something in all these flies called mono straights. And if you want to check out how to do this, I made a quick tutorial. It's very quick. This will take you 15 minutes to make about 100 of these guys. So you can watch that video right there. And all you do is you take the memory out of mono. Now I like to use a stiff mono. This happens to be 60 pound. It's 28 thousandths of an inch diameter. Now what's really cool is it allows me to tie back here. I'm going to dress this with materials. Now those materials are going to have lift in the water. There's going to be water tension on them that's going to create a force in the upward direction. Now that's important because this hook in the water, if you just dress the nose weightless, it'll sag a little bit. And you can see that that angle changed. Now because this is inline and I have a stiff mono, the lift is going to use the power of that mono, the strength of that mono, the diameter, the thickness of it, and it's going to use it to level it back out. You see that? It's going to use it to level it back out. Now, because it's light wire, I don't need a lot of force. I don't need a lot of anything. This one's simple because it's light. You just use 60 pound mono with the stiffness pushing. It's going to physically push that hook back to level through the stiffness of the mono and create a fly that's going to ride perfectly true. So let's dive in and check it out. First thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to dress this with a rattle, because rattles are something I've been playing with in my really stained water. And the cool thing about this hook is that you can put the rattles on the inside of the hook because we have linear sections. If you have a straight curve, you can only put rattles on the outside. But with linear sections, I can put the rattle on the inside, tuck it inside the wire, protect it, and keep it safe. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with a short piece of mono here, and I'm going to pin it right to the side of my hook. The reason why is because the glass rattles are not very forgiving to tie with, and I'm going to basically create a little box here that's going to stop my rattle from rolling or moving around, so it's a lot easier to tie in. So you can see I just have mono on both sides. Use your fingers to just get it where you need it. And so I've created a nice little flat spot. And I'm going to come in on the 2/0. You can use a 3mm or 4mm, but I'm going to use a 3mm glass rattle. Nice light rattle. It's kind of appropriate for this size fly. And I'm just going to tuck that inside the wire. You can see I'm not having any issues really controlling that rattle and getting it where I want it. I'm going to come down onto my hook here and get that guy taken care of. Now if you have any twists to that, I like to just move it out of the way, locked in place, come in with some zap, and the Zap-A-Gap is going to weld all that together. Now, to make that as durable as possible, I am going to come in with some UV resin, but I'm going to let the glue set up first. So, that is going to get pushed off to the side here. So now we got to come in and tie our extended body. And it's really, really simple. I'm going to put that, I think, dead center. I'm coming in with a 20mm shank. We're going to do all the extended bodies on shanks because it is easy. It's really easy. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to close that R-bend, come down onto that shank, come back up, and you can see I'm tying with monofilament thread. And the mono is really wicked cool because when you take two pieces of mono and we're going to tie them on top of each other and then you hit it with Ca+ glue, the glue in the mono has basically a chemical reaction that'll plastic weld the two together. So all I did was take that mono straight, put it right on top of the hook, and lashed it down. It is quite literally that simple. That's all you're doing right there. And because we're tying with mono thread, this is 8/1000 of an inch mono thread from Vivas, and then we're attaching that 60-pound mono, and I'm going to hit this with Zap-A-Gap, physically plastic weld the two together. It'll heat up, they'll kind of melt and join on each other, and it's nearly impossible to get this off this shank. Nearly impossible. Like if you took a razor blade to it, it'd take you a long time. It doesn't just like cut right off. The stuff is durable. So to do our little tail section here, I hit my thread with some wax. I'm going to come in with some Flashaboo dubbing to make just a little thread bump in the back. Just mash that onto your thread here. And then because my thread is nice and clear, I can just tie on top of that. It really doesn't matter. We're going to use that to flare our Swimbait Hair substitute. So what I'm going to come in with for a substitute for Swimbait Hair is big fly fiber straight. And if you were to look at the two and hold them up side by side, they're nearly identical. They have about the same stiffness in the water, they're the same diameter, but the difference is this is not tapered. It doesn't come woven on a mat. So when you cut that Swimbait off, you just comb it out and it's ready to go. You can ply it on. This one has a little bit more material prep, a little bit more material handling. That's going to make it a little bit more difficult to use, but it's a very accessible fiber. So I'm going to take off a good chunk here. You can see that's all the way at full length. It's pretty long stuff. Then I'm going to cut that in half. So this is going to tie two flies technically, maybe a little bit of the collar. So I've taken that big fly fiber, and just to be honest with you guys, it's about 6.5, close to 7 inches long. So it's 7 inches long of big fly fiber right there. So I laid the big fly fiber in my lap. I'm going to come in with a product called Wing and Flash, a nice really thin shredded mylar. It blends really well with the big fly fiber and Swimbait Hair. And then I'm going to simply rip stack the two. And the reason why I like to rip stack this, and rip stacking is simply just putting it in your hand and pulling it out and putting it back in. But it kind of tapers the fibers for me. You can see the tips are all going to become slightly uneven. on a line. I'm going to get some nice short fibers, medium fibers, long fibers. And it's going to be perfect for tying this fly lickety split. So when that's properly blended, I'm just going to put a little bit of extra finger taper into it. Make sure I have quite a few different fiber lengths in there. Then I'm going to pinch it right in the middle and just comb it out. Now you can see, because it's 7 inches long, but then we tapered it, it grew a little bit. So what you're going to do is you're just going to come and cut that in half. And what you end up with is a tail stack and a wing stack. You're good to go. So I'm going to use a nice thick stack for the tail so that I have the lift from the material to help balance out that hook. You're going to come and tie this in backwards and use the dubbing bump to flare the butt ends of the big fly fiber. And I'm just using my fingers and pinching it to manipulate that and make sure it all looks nice. Evenly distributed. I'm going to come in with a push tool, make sure I get my mono in there. The mono goes right through the push tool, you can see it right there. And I'm able to just control all that. And then I'm going to bullet tie that. And come in and make sure that you like how it's laying, you like the density, it's nice and even. And that is a super clean tail that's going to have some lift. And it's going to move beautifully in the water. Come in with a whip finish. And then because the big fly fiber is nylon and our monofilament is a plastic, those two things, they love each other with some CA+. Basically for this whole thing, you're creating like a super indestructible fly. It's pretty crazy. So that's our extended body. You can see it didn't take any more time or any more prep work really than it would to just tie the tail on a normal hook. All we had to do was just attach some mono. Didn't really take any time at all. So it's really simple. Now we're going to come back in with our hook here. And I mentioned earlier, I'm going to hit that with some UV resin to lock it in place and try to make that as durable as possible. So this is some Deer Creek UV Fine Flex. Yeah, this is the sickest light ever. Cost me 11 bucks. I think I'll talk about this thing in a different video because that is the slickest UV light I've ever found. That's rock solid, cured all the way, no tack whatsoever. That thing is powerful and it plugs into the wall. Now, anyway, I'm getting distracted here. I'm gonna come in and attach my mono. And we're gonna make that fly span that gap and balance out perfectly, lickety split, just like this. And you can control the length that goes back to whatever length you like. Right up, I like to keep it pretty tight to that. And all you got to do is control that back. Use your fingernails to keep that mono right on top of the hook. Because our tail is symmetrical, it really doesn't matter if there's any twist to it. And then I'm going to leave room at the hook eye here to attach our bead chain. Now because the two get plastic welded, you don't need a crazy amount of room to tie it in. You don't need to take it down through the hook eye. You don't need to do any of that. I can see I have a little bit of lift right there. So I'm going to come with some relaxed thread and just tie it down the bend a little bit to get that perfectly dead straight. And then I'm going to try to control these tailing materials. I'll just get them out of the way and clamp them down. Then we're going to weld those guys together. Now while those guys are welding to each other, I'm going to come in and make another dubbing bump here. So just a little bit of wax. This is Flashaboo dubbing. You can use any sort of just shredded mylar. Get that tied in right there at the back. take my thread through it a few times just so it's really durable, because I'm just using that to flare our big fly fiber. Then I can come in with my big fly fiber stack here. This is all pre-blended and tapered because we did it when we did both of them at the same time. I can leave the butts a little bit long to kind of get like a little bit of bulkhead water push effect in there. Catch it and then just move it around. Once that's trapped, you just walk your thread back to that bump and you can see those butts starting to flare more and more. Come in with a push tool. Manipulate that fiber so that it's perfectly distributed. And then catch it with a super clean bullet tie. And so that's quite a bit easier than doing the hollow ties that are shown in the original Chosen One tutorial. Just doing that right there. Look at this thing. That's so crazy cool. It's just like a soft plastic. It's just like a soft plastic. Freaking love it. Alright, now I'm going to come in with some, this is size large bead chain. It's nice and light, but it gives a good eye spot to the fly. And I'm going to put that right on the bottom back here. Where do I want these guys? Yeah, that's good right there. Make sure they're right on the underside. Just figure eighted those guys, and now I'm doing my locking wraps. I'm going to leave the peacock off this one. That's in the original Chosen One. I'm going to keep this one just kind of simple and plain Jane. I'm going to do one more wing stack, because if you remember, we typically use the squimpish hair in the actual head, in the dubbing loop. So I'm going to create a nice thin veil here. I need a little bit more big fly fiber. I'm just going to kind of cut it to the length I need. So I'm going to cut that in half, cut it in half again, and then if I were to taper that, it'd be a nice little short collar here. And then I'm going to come in, if I can find it, I got material all over the place, with some wing and flash, and I'm going to re-blend that right about there. And I'm going to come in and just rip stack that, just like we did for our original two stacks here, just to add a little bit of bulk. And what you're going to do is, instead of using the dubbing loop to create the volume, we're going to cheat. We're going to come in and we're going to use that bump to create the volume. And I have this tied in about 60-40, and so I'm going to come in and just catch that. Now my lead eyes are in the way of my bead chain, but that's okay. Pull some to the bottom, get some over there on the sides, apply some pressure to that. And then fold that back on itself. And if you need to, you can always do like the top and the sides. Lock that in and then come under and do the bottom side. It's kind of easier than trying to get it all at once. But I put the eyes in so that I wouldn't crowd the head. I wanted to make sure I had enough room for everything. And then they kind of got in the way there. But you're using that previous stack to get all that volume. And now you have all this bulk up front, and that's okay because that's going to lay down a little bit with our strung fuzzy fiber head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a big hank of strung fuzzy fiber. I'm going to cut off just a little pinch here. I think it's close to about 70 fibers that I typically like to use. Kind of comb that out. Now I'm going to fold that in half, cut it, and fold that in half and cut it. This has always been kind of my working length, quarter length strung fuzzy fiber. Coming back in with my wing and flash. I like to blend the flash into the head. I like to blend the flash throughout the whole fly. I think it's really cool to do that. Cut that in half, and now I'm just going to rip stack that, but you can skip that part. I love how absurd this thing looks in the vise right now. You gotta trust me, guys. You gotta trust me. We're gonna take care of it. It's gonna be a sexy little fly by the time we're done. Comb that out. Make sure you get all those fibers aligned. That's extremely helpful for doing the dubbing loop, but doesn't really matter here, but get them all aligned. And what we're gonna do is I'm gonna pinch that, basically dead center, and then I'm gonna cut it off to a side. So you're gonna end up with a longer section and a shorter section. And we're gonna come and we're just gonna drape that literally around those eyes, nice and loosey-goosey, the way you would stack wool. Come in with a loose thread turn. Make sure your thread torque, the twist of your thread as it comes down, doesn't move the fibers out of the way. And then lock that in place with some really hard pressure. And then you're just gonna fold that back. You can use the lead eyes to help you here, and you just want to basically reverse tie that. And then come down to that nose. So you can see we stacked it, and then we have both sections, the long section and the short section, both kind of fading back, and that's going to be super helpful for trimming that to shape. You want both those kind of leaning back. Now I'm going to come in here, I think that might be a little dense, with my short fiber. And I'm going to take the tapered ends and fan them back, and I'm just going to loosely drape this around the hook just like we did before. Come up with a loose catch. You see how loose that is. I'm going to start to cinch it down. You can see my torque is rotating those fibers. So I'm going to put a second one on there. I'm going to pull those fibers out a wee bit, and then that was messy. Let me show you guys what I just did so that we're all on the same page. So when I'm draping this over this, I'm being nice and loose. And I'm coming up with really loose thread. And I'm going to do a full loop and a half. Now before I cinch down, I can literally kind of grab that and pull it into place. Tuck it in behind the eye and then pack it with your fingers. You don't have to crowd the hook eye, just control the fiber. Then you can really lock it in place. And then you want to come back and do what we just did. And this time, instead of using your lead eyes, you're going to use your hook eye to make your thread dam and really force that back. Try to get those fibers to separate a little bit. You want these guys folded back as well, so build up a nice little head there. If you don't do it perfectly, you'll get just little air gaps in your head. It's not super big, it just won't look as clean. And you can see how that strong fuzzy fiber, it collapsed that rear wing and made everything look nice and pretty. And then we can just come in and weld all that shut. One thing I'll do here is I'll put a little bit more glue on there than I need. And then you come in with a bodkin and you lightly, very lightly, just draw it up into the fibers as you're pulling back on them. And it'll help set those back so that they don't stick straight up or stick forward or stick out, but it'll help them contour the eyes. And because the strong fuzzy fiber is just synthetic, it really takes that glue really well and sets up in that perfect shape so that you get a really clean eye. Then we're just going to come in and shape this guy. So I like to just do basically a bullet shape. Now I'm going to leave this one more or less plain Jane. Just going to counter shade my head just with a chart pack marker here. Rub that into place. Now what's really cool is because the whole fly is stacked, you can very easily counter shade the big fly fiber and put a darker wing on top, lighter wings on the belly. You could two-tone the fly, tie it, high tie it, low tie it. You could counter shade the head. But we're just going to keep it all simple and just tie a classic kind of lemon head here and blend that out throughout the wing. So that's your chosen one variation, tied swim bait style. What I'd like to do is I'm going to throw this guy in the fish tank and crank up some current so that you guys can see how well it balances, and on top of that, most importantly, how it rides true. Because everything is stacked on that plane, literally on that plane, all of that hook wire, even the rattles, even though they're inside the hook, all the rattles, all that hook wire is keeling that fly, getting it to ride perfectly true. As that head and wing collapse, you can see that hook point is buried just right there. So that's swim bait style. Let's get this guy in the tank and watch her swim. Man, that thing came out pretty. Look at that. Get that in there. Get all that air out of the head. Make sure there's no trapped air in there. Make sure those fibers are all happy. Now I can't show you what it truly looks like on a jerk strip, or what it would look like if my fly line was keeping it level. Obviously it's going to sag back because the mono comes up and out of the tank, right? So it's being held in place like that, and I can't get it to relax perfectly level. So what I'll do at the end is I'll turn the pump off so that you guys can properly see kind of what it would look like. But let's get this guy in the tube and crank that tube up and show you just how happy she is to ride. My tank is a little dirty, sorry about that. It's been going on about 2 weeks now. I got to get in there and clean it, but that hook, no matter what you do to it, with all that material stacked up on that inline plane with the hook eye, it just loves to ride true. No matter what you do to it, that thing's going to ride truer than true. You can see when that drops, it drops more or less nice and level. It's got a little bit of head dip to it from the bead chain on complete slack, but it's not sagging heavy in the rear, which is super important. Nice. That's sick. Alright, time to let this guy dry out, do some photography, start to edit some videos. Thanks for watching, guys.